Have you ever felt, as a healer, as a coach, as someone that is empathic, that you want to rescue or fix the problems of your family members, your friends, and your clients? Is this affecting your life? Is it draining you? That is the topic of today's podcast.
So welcome to the Successful Healers Hub podcast. Jennifer Cruz, Gustavo Castañer. This is where being weird is an asset. And yes, when you're a healer, when you have this innate, deep longing to help other people, oftentimes you can get caught up in the desire to rescue that person because you see this problem they have, you have this awareness that they don't see, and you wish that you could solve their problem and end their pain, end their drama. And it's a weird dynamic because it's a fine line between actually helping someone and rescuing someone. What's the difference, do you think?
Well, I think that rescuing is kind of dangerous because it's something that we're told in society that it is a good thing. Right? If you want to rescue someone,
Be the hero.
You're the hero.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing yourself for somebody else. You are giving them guidance. But in truth, there is a certain ego that is playing a part here, where you are assuming that you know what's best, or you are assuming that that person shouldn't be going through what they're going through. And this is when learning to respect the path of others comes into play.
Absolutely.
Trying to rescue people leaves you depleted, and usually it makes them feel resentful because they don't want to be rescued.
Exactly.
There's a difference between being an agent for helping someone, supporting someone on their journey, someone that wants to be helped, someone that wants to get better, and you give them tools and you support them in that journey so that they do it themselves. Now, there's something very different and very egoic, in my opinion, to say, no, I got it. Like, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it.
Better.
I know better.
I know what's best for you.
I know what's best for you. Just do what I tell you.
Yeah.
Or let me do it in the worst case scenario.
Right. And
Let me do it for you.
many people have been on the end of someone trying to rescue you. Usually, it's your parents, right? Because they know what's better for you. You know, choose this path. Don't do this, and you're very resistant to that. But then as we grow up, we get more serious, we get into these different dynamics. Now, Jen touched on many different, very important aspects. So let's dissect that. On one hand, the rescuer, it's an archetype. It's part of the shadow self. It's this egocentric aspect of ourselves that wants to fix and rescue other people. Usually, it's a projection, right? Because we don't want to look within. We don't want to see what's wrong with us, etc. We want to feel better about ourselves because when we fix and help other people, it kind of boosts our self-esteem and our ego, right?
Look what I did.
Right.
Look how amazing I am.
Yeah.
I rescued them.
And what Jen said is that usually when you come from this mindset with this intent, you tend to attract victims. And more so a person who is identified with the victim archetype. And when you have a person like this, they really don't want you to help them. They want you to feel pity for them, right? So you go, Jen, scratch that eye. So
it's not my eyes, my nose, and it's not sexy. Sorry about that.
now she looks like Rudolph the reindeer.
It's almost Christmas. It's okay.
Yeah, but yeah, you get into these dynamics where the person doesn't want to be helped, rescued, and then you're trying desperately to do so, and then you have this victim that eventually gets tired of that, and then they lash out. So the victim turns into the tyrant, then you get hurt, and then they try to rescue you. So it's this insane karmic loop that happens over and over again, and then it spills, with family members, in your intimate relationships, and then as a healer, if you are in the healing industry, it spills into your clients, and it's very dangerous. Proceed with caution.
And how do you know that, Gustavo? Have you ever been through? Have you ever participated in the rescuer archetype?
Absolutely.
Which, by the way, archetype, for those of you who don't know, which I thought it was something, but I've talked to clients where I'm not sure what it means.
Okay.
So it's simply a persona. It's something that repeats itself throughout history. You can see like the archetype of the hero. If I tell you hero, you immediately certain attributes come to mind. So that's what we mean by archetype.
Right, it's imbued in the collective consciousness of humanity. No matter the culture, the age, you can see this archetype in different people of different ages, races, nationalities, doesn't matter, right? But yeah, I've been in the role of the rescuer many times in my life. In the beginning, I remember when I started awakening, I desperately wanted to rescue my mom. I thought that, she needed rescuing because my mom, for a very long time, identified with being a victim. Life is hard, it's painful, and I wanted to rescue her. I remember praying that I could rescue her. Then in intimate relationships, I remember that was one of the biggest dramas in my relationships was I wanted to fix that other person. And what I discovered was that I had a lot of unconscious guilt from past lifetimes. And I felt so guilty that when I got into a relationship, the attempt to fix that person would kind of boost my self-esteem, would alleviate that guilt. But usually that guilt magnetized me to people who would utilize that guilt to, manipulate me, etc. So it wasn't nice. And then when I became a healer,
Not me. He's not talking about me.
No, previous relationships.
Let's make that clear.
And then when I got into my healing practice, healing business, I also, I started attracting clients who appeared to want help, but as soon as I pointed out things that they didn't want to see, they became really defensive. And so I tried hard to rescue them and fix them, and it just caused me a lot of pain.
Yeah.
How about you?
Same thing. I think that there's nothing worse. There's a saying in Spanish that the worst kind of blind person is the one that doesn't want to see. Yeah. That's the poor translation. Yeah. And when somebody doesn't want to see because they're simply not ready, you're really wasting your energy. Right? They have their own path. And remember that the same message will come back to them many different ways.
Yes.
Maybe this is just not the time. You were one person who told them. But it is up to you to be able to cut the cords of attachment and to give them back the responsibility for their own life.
Absolutely.
Why? Because then you get depleted. For me, as a little kid, I felt that I was, like, my higher senses were very awake. And I was very aware of what the adults in my life were feeling and thinking. And I wanted to make them happy.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first realized that I couldn't do that, I sat on my bed and I cried and cried and cried and cried. I felt a huge sense of failure. But it was also something that liberated me and made me free and helped me understand that people are happy in their own way. Okay? Not maybe under my standard, but their own way. And that it is in between them and God. It is not my job to make them happy. It is my job to make myself happy and to lead by example.
Yes.
And that was huge. That was a great moment. But it still translated to my clients at first.
Yeah.
Because you want to do a good job. And you think that doing a good job means that whatever problem they came with, you're going to solve it for them. If you just saw what I see, if you could understand what I'm saying, I'm going to give you all the answers and boom. But they might not be ready, especially when they are in victimization. The archetype of the victim doesn't want to be looked at, doesn't like it. So usually when you point that out, people lash out, and it's important to give them their space and not to assume that people shouldn't suffer. That was a big one for me. I don't know for you, but like that suffering, there are gifts in suffering. You know, obviously we think, well, no, nobody in the world should suffer. Is that true?
Right. And that brings up a great point. And before I say that, I want to say, Jen mentioned cutting cords of attachments. There's a link below for free session, cutting cords. If you haven't done that, book that session, cut cords with family members, past relationships.
It's free, and that doesn't mean that you cut like the actual...
Yeah, the spiritual ties, that's very different. I'll explain that. Okay. Now, going back to what Jen said, honoring that person's journey. Each of us have a heroic journey. Yeah. When you incarnate, you see this beautiful path and you see the trials and tribulations that you will go through. And some of those challenges, like Jen said, contain huge blessings and gifts. And as a rescuer, sometimes you're impeding that from taking place. You're trying to avoid that person goes through that, which they're meant to go through that. And so you're not honoring your soul's mission, their heroic journey. Yeah. And it's so liberating and empowering when you say, I honor your free will. That's what you want to choose. Beautiful. I honor that choice. I love you from that choice. Doesn't mean that you don't set up boundaries. You can, if it's affecting you, you can set up clear boundaries of respect, of power, etc. But you honor their path. And that brings up another point, that when you are in the rescuer role, usually you're taking away that person's, the candy from their mouth. You're robbing them from that personal power of making the choice, making the mistake, going through the failure, right? Yeah. And it's so liberating when you honor that person's path. You free yourself from interfering or from manipulating or somehow taking away that gift or that responsibility, right?
Yeah, sometimes life has to crack you open. Yeah. Right? And that way, when that happens, you go within.
Yeah.
You ask questions.
Think about how many times in your life you went through something that at the time you were going through it, it felt horrible. You thought it was the end. And then you learned. You grew. You evolved. And now you look back and you're like, thank God I went through that dark night of the soul, that I went through that depression, that I went through that toxic relationship, because now I know. Or maybe you were raised in a family where there was abuse, etc., and they were teaching you what not to do, right?
Yes.
Parent was an alcoholic. Now you don't drink. Parent, would abuse you physically, scold you. Now you're a parent and you choose not to do that with your child.
Right. I think that life hands you certain cards, certain circumstances, certain things that you have to go through to become the person you're meant to become. And as the person who's supporting somebody else, it's not for you to decide what someone should be going through or not. Yeah. You're there to offer support to the degree that the person is open and willing to take it. But at the end of the day, you keep the ball on their court. Now, yesterday, I was with a client, and we were actually talking about the archetype of the martyr.
Ooh.
Which is
a deadly combination.
It's a deadly combination.
Yeah.
And it creates a lot more problems than it does solutions. And just like the archetype of the rescuer, in society we're told that this is a good thing. Right? If you're a martyr,
Yeah.
if you sacrifice yourself for others, everything for everybody else and not me, very typical in healers, then you're a good person. That's a good thing.
Right.
Now we're here to shatter that and to unfortunately inform you
Right.
that it is not.
So
first describe what is the martyr.
right, exactly. The martyr is this persona that the programming that it runs, right? Remember all these archetypes and personas, it's not the person itself. It's a program that they're running. So that helps when you learn to identify, this is a persona, this is not my mom, this is not my wife, this is not my client. It's a persona, a program that they're running.
Because they think it's a good thing.
Exactly, they're identified with it.
Or you're running it.
Right, but it's not their essence. Now the martyr is this program that says, look all that I've done for you. Look at all the sacrifices I've made for you. Right? So the martyr is this persona that does things with an agenda. They help you, but they're keeping record, keeping tabs. And when you don't follow their suggestions or their advice, they say like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Look at everything you owe me.
Yeah.
You owe me.
Come on. I gave you money. I gave you advice. I helped you here. Like you owe me.
Look at everything I've done for you.
Exactly. And they want to make you feel guilty. That's why having unconscious guilt, it puts you in a really bad position, because a martyr can use it to manipulate you, a victim can use it to manipulate you, and not only that, but guilt is like the greatest blockage there is to like self-love and joy. So if you have guilt, process that clearly.
But the thing is, a lot of times people don't realize that they're in these roles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the whole thing about trying to have people feel like they owe you, if you're in the role of the martyr, it's not a conscious thing.
Absolutely.
That's why I love so much Psyche and the work that I do, because we get to identify what's going on at the subconscious level. But you might have somebody in your life where it's like they always get to be the hero.
Yeah.
And you can never repay them. You always feel like you're indebted to them.
Yeah.
Nothing that you do will ever be enough. But on top of that, usually martyrs, their channels of receiving are closed. And so they get to hug the joy of giving.
Yeah.
They don't give you the pleasure to give,
Exactly.
because they don't accept anything that you have to give them. And they hug the privilege, the honoring, the ego boost of being the giver. And it creates a huge imbalance in the relationship. And it makes it so that the other person, the person that is not the martyr, always feels bad, like, you know, there's a debt, uneven. And it gets to the point where it can really affect your self-esteem.
Absolutely.
Because you think that they're so great and you're not, because it's not comparable. But what you're not realizing is that in a way, they're using giving to boost themselves and to put you in that position without realizing it, right? They're usually very kind-hearted people.
Yes.
With good intent.
Yeah.
But they were taught when they were growing up, probably maybe through religion or different philosophies, that teach that the martyr, being a martyr, is a good thing.
Yeah.
Nothing for me, everything for everybody else. And this applies a lot to women. Like if you're a woman, if you're a healer and a mom, oh my God, chances are at some point you've entered into the martyr and you have subconscious resentment towards everybody because no one gives as much as you. Right? But the truth is, are you really open to receive?
So Jen brought a great point as for you to identify if you are caught up in one of these dynamics. And usually it feels like there is something out of balance. The energy exchange doesn't feel balanced.
Yeah.
There's the giving and receiving is not balanced. So usually that's a good point and something to become aware of. Indication that you're in that type of dynamic. So what can you do? Because first is becoming aware, right? Once you become aware of these patterns, you can identify them, you can awake to them. Okay. The next step is take action. I highly recommend doing energy clearings to transmute the traumas, the soul fragments, the karmic imprints that spawn, in many cases, these archetypes. Whether it's the victim, the martyr, the rescuer. All these archetypes have a set of energetic blockages, identities from your past that they come forward, you get triggered, and you play these roles, right? And then change your mindset. Like, make conscious decisions to set boundaries, to respect other people's free will, to honor their free will and say, you know what? I'm not going to go there.
You gotta know, I'm here, but...
Yeah. They didn't ask for my advice. I'm not going to give it, right?
That's a hard one, not giving unsolicited advice.
Yeah, it's a huge one, right? It's a huge one.
We never do that, right?
Never
have.
We're perfect.
I definitely got caught up for years in giving unsolicited advice, and it always leads to resentment.
Yeah. Think about this. Oftentimes when you want to help someone that doesn't want to be helped, what do? They become defensive because their ego senses that you're telling them that who they are and what they're doing is wrong. And so people default into like, no. Stop it, right? Or if you have a victim, they'll play along, getting your self-pity, but eventually, like I said, they will lash out. So take responsibility. And one big part is, if you see it in other people, you probably have it. So look within. That's something that changed my life. When I started my healing practice, I started attracting a lot of victims, and I saw this pattern. I said, okay, let me clear this on myself first. Let me heal the martyr, heal the rescuer, heal the victim, raise my frequency, embody my own personal power, not give it advice, respect other people's free will. And then my frequency changed. I started to attracting more people who were more focused on taking responsibility, being empowered, and that they were willing to meet me halfway. So I didn't have to rescue them. I became this facilitator. This is the tools and resources I have, but the client comes halfway and they do the work. Right? And it felt so amazing. Another great tip was, as a healer online, I would get a lot of emails. I still do. With people who wanted to book sessions or were already booking a session, and they wrote, what they wanted to work on, etc. And me being a healer, I would read that and I would start thinking about what could I do. And so I was draining my energy. So I said, okay, let me change my approach. So what I did was, if it was someone who already booked the session, I would read the email like 5 minutes before the session. So I could come into the session and then get to work, right? If it was someone who didn't book a session, then I would say, okay, how can I help this person without trying to rescue them or fix the problem, and leave some space so that they can do the work or book a session, whatever they needed. So there are things that you can do energetically, mentally, emotionally to not fall into those patterns.
Yeah. And be ready, because when you change this energy in yourself, when you start to create more balance in between giving and receiving, which, by the way, receiving is also a way to love. Write that down.
Amen.
Receiving is also a way to love, because when you open yourself up to receive, you are giving the other the privilege of being the giver. Let's say that somebody takes you out to dinner, a friend, you go to dinner with a friend and they offer to pay. When you allow them to pay for you, you give them the opportunity to express abundance.
Yeah.
To enjoy gifting you something. So that is also a way to support somebody, receiving. In addition to that, when it comes to advice, just ask for permission. I have this idea. Would you like to hear it? And I've learned to do that, but it took me a really long time. These changes don't happen overnight, but as you become aware and you do the work, which we highly recommend that you do, which last night, one of the clients that I was working with, she realized that it was all about, she learned from religion that you have to be humble. It's this idea that you have to be humble. She didn't want to make herself too big, too much, draw too much attention to herself, because that's not righteous, or that doesn't please God.
Right.
But she developed this persona where it's like, no, not me. No, everything for everybody else. I'm not pretty. I'm not good. And constantly bringing herself down, and that led to rescuing martyr archetypes. And she realized that, and we were able to heal this idea that kind of humility is a good thing. To be honest with you, I don't believe in humility. And I know that sounds controversial, but if you look up the meaning of that word, it means to lessen your importance, to make yourself less than.
Yes.
I also don't believe in believing that you're better than anybody else.
Yeah.
We all have gifts. We all are unique in our own way, and we all matter.
But what we do believe in is make yourself a priority.
Right. Like you taught me that a lot. You call that, what is it, like?
Divine
Selfishness.
Yeah,
Was it?
divine selfishness. Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to overdo it,
Right.
but in healthy amounts.
Yeah.
You cannot give what you do not have. If you're depleted, you don't have. You're gonna be snapping at your kids, at your husband, even at your clients. You're not gonna feel good. It can lead to health problems, mental problems, all kinds of problems. It is important to learn to balance and to understand that doesn't make you a better person. It is better when you are filled to the brim and you're sort of like get to the point where you're overflowing to others, instead of being the one who's always giving to the point where you're just completely depleted.
Yes. And one last great advice.
Great advice.
That you did not solicit, but because you're watching this.
You kind of did. You hit play, okay?
Yeah,
it's your fault.
No, but one thing that really helped me was, I don't remember where I learned this, but in relationships, especially, and this is a great one for men. If Jen comes to me with an issue, I can ask the following question. Are we problem solving, or am I just listening? If she wants my input, my advice, my fixing capabilities, and solution-oriented mind, then she'll say, I want to fix this problem. Like, I want your input.
Yes.
If she says, I just want you to listen, then I'm like, ooh, perfect. All right. Put on the listening hat, and I don't have to. And that way, she feels like I'm really listening, that I am empathically connected to her, instead of trying to fix her problem because I want to rescue her.
Which we love, ladies, right?
Yes.
Right? It's going to save you a lot of problems in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And as you change, like I said, it's not going to happen overnight, but unfortunately, some people are going to exit your reality as you do this. People who are used to nourishing themselves from that rescuer energy of yours. And you tend to attract, the good news is that you tend to attract people who are a little bit more in their power, more willing to do the work, to take responsibility, and it's a completely different dynamic.
Yes.
And you get to feel amazing after sessions instead of feeling like you need to take a nap.
Yes. Another indicator that you might be caught up in one of those dynamics. If you're doing energy healing sessions and you're feeling constantly depleted, then the energy exchange is out of balance. Right, so I've helped a lot of people, empaths specifically, who desperately say, I love this work, but I'm always just exhausted. How can I change this? Well, these are the things that you may want to look at. Anyway, those are our 2 cents into rescuing other people. Rescue yourself, and then no one else needs rescuing.
That's just, like when you raise your frequency and take care of you, and you refill this one, then you are in a position to really impact other people just by your frequency. But when you're walking around like this, feeling like crap because you're completely depleted, not so much.
And a big one, many healers, we want to rescue the world because the world is collapsing. It's, I gotta save the world. Come on, look at the weight of that. That's not your responsibility. That's not your job.
Or at least know that it's a selfish pursuit.
Yeah.
That's what I say, because in my case and what we talked about, I definitely want to make changes to the world. I want to build the world, but this is my opinion of the kind of world I would like to live in. I would like my children to live in. And so what I'm doing is sort of building my idea of that. It's not about, for everybody, I gotta save them. It's not like that.
And like Byron Katie says, what would you prefer? World peace or inner peace?
Right.
Because if you have inner peace, then all of a sudden the world is just peaceful. It's magical, because that's that. When you're in peace, it means that you are completely in resonance, in alignment with Source Will. You love what is. And you understand that the drama needs to be played out.
Right, you need light and shadow. And I am really into bringing awareness around this idea of collective consciousness. And that it starts with us. You have to be at peace first. If each one of us takes the time to cultivate inner peace, then we'll have a peaceful world. But you cannot expect the world to be peaceful if you are not peaceful.
If your mind,
your heart in general, you have violence in your mind, you have war within, you don't love yourself, you're trying to rescue everybody and you just feel horrible about it. That doesn't help.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, share with a friend.
Be a friend and share with a friend.
Yes. And we'll see you in the next one. Much love.
Bye.
Bye-bye.